Hey, thanks for listening to the Fearfully and Wonderfully Me podcast. Ladies, if you're ready to take your leadership to the next level, I'd love to invite you to join me on a monthly call on personal and professional leadership development, specifically for women. You can join from Zoom via your desktop or on the mobile app on your phone. The app is free. There's no cost to join the sessions, and I invite you to just come along and grow with me and the other ladies who are committed to developing themselves personally and professionally, increasing their influence, developing their leadership, and maximizing their results. Hey, you can find out more details and get the registration link at riastory.com/leadership call. See you then. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of the Fearfully and Wonderfully Me podcast. Today's episode is all about the difference between directing and developing. And developing is always better than directing. So this principle, I think this principle is one of the cool things about this principle is it's easy to see a direct correlation as a person in your personal life, as a parent perhaps, or also as a leader in a position at work. And the thing is that a lot of times we don't necessarily understand why we should be developing someone instead of directing them. So, what's the difference? First off, directing someone is simply telling them what to do, right? And you've maybe heard the term of go for delegation. It just means go do this, and you're going to tell them what to do and how to do it and exactly what they need to do to carry out the mission. Now, sometimes that there's a need for that. But how much better it can be when you realize that you can develop that person to think for themselves. One of the comments I've heard from so many people is, I don't know why my kids don't think for themselves. Well, you have to teach them. Instead of always giving them the answers, instead of always telling them what to do and how to do it, you have to develop them and help them think for themselves. This is a different level of delegation. Now, there again, easy to see that as a parent, perhaps, where you tell someone to clean their room, but in the early years, you have to tell them what clean looks like. But hopefully, as they grow older, you learn to delegate. Just keep the room clean so you don't have to go in there every single day and say, "Hey, make your bed. Hey, pick up this, pick up the clothes off the floor," right? You don't want to always be telling them every single thing to do to get the room clean. You want to just be able to say, "Hey, keep your room clean." But if you haven't developed them to think through that themselves, it's much more difficult to do. And so what ends up happening is you end up directing over and over and over and over and over and over again. Now, as a parent, that can be frustrating because you're simply having to repeat yourself. But as a leader, you cannot reach your highest level of effectiveness if you are trying to direct every single person on the team, because that's management, right? Telling them what to do and how to do it every single time means they're always going to be coming to you for the answers, for the solutions. Whenever they have a problem, they're just going to come and bring that to you. And you might could do that with one or two people, but you cannot be really effective because you're going to spend all your time solving everybody else's problems, and you cannot do the things you need to do if you're always doing all of the things that other people should be doing. So, when we talk about that, it's easy to see how short term it takes a little longer to develop someone, but long term, it's much, much better, and it's going to free you up long term to develop them instead of directing them all the time. So, for example, you often have the challenge of delegating to someone, and the higher you go up as a formal level leader, the more frequently you will need to delegate and develop instead of direct. The higher you go, the higher you climb as a formal level of leader in a leadership position, the greater the need for developing your team and instead of directing them, right? Delegating and developing. So any task or project carries with it responsibility. Now, how much of that responsibility should you carry when you delegate something? Because as a leader, the more you delegate effectively, the more able you're going to be able to focus on the things there again that you can only you can do. So, if you delegate the result instead of delegate the method, you can develop the person, but that requires coaching, right? Giving someone a project and coach them through asking questions. Give them some of the responsibility, but be clear on what level of responsibility, what level of delegation, and coach them through asking questions like, what would success look like with this project? Whether that's taking out the trash or building a new software program at work, you have to be clear about what success would look like, and what would it mean to be effective, to be successful in this role. This is a stewardship delegation where you are delegating the results and the responsibility for making it happen, but you're not dictating the method. And what that allows you to do, number one, it's going to help you empower that person. It's going to help you develop that person. It's going to help them think through what's required. It's going to help you learn something. They may come up with a different way of doing it that you may not even have thought of. It allows you to tap into that person as a resource, right? Because now you've got two brains thinking through this instead of just one. And there again, it might take a little more time on the front end, but long term, it's going to help you be much more successful. So, thinking through, asking questions like, what resources do you need from me? Hey, here's this project. I'd like you to carry this project, but I need you to tap in and give me regular reports, right? That's a different level of responsibility, a different level of delegation than saying, here, I'm giving you this project, go do it. I don't even need to know. Just go take care of it, right? That's a higher level of delegation. And that's a higher level of trust. It might be based on the level of trust you have in the individual. It might be based on the importance of the project or the criticalness or the timing or the safety, all different factors that can contribute to what level you want to delegate the responsibility. But it's always better to delegate that responsibility rather than dictate the method of how they accomplish the project. Now, unfortunately, questions are underutilized as a tool for many of us, for many leaders, for many people. Because great leaders realize that questions are a powerful way to connect with and develop that other person. Sam Walton said, asking and hearing people's opinions has a greater effect on them than telling them, good job, right? Questions allow you to empower and engage somebody. Asking questions shows respect, allows you to learn how they're thinking, allows you to see another perspective, allows them to influence you, which increases your influence with them, right? This is the power of effectively coaching when you are developing someone, when you're learning how to delegate to them getting the result on the project or the task instead of just simply telling them what to do. And long term, you're going to be able to just turn more and more of them, more things over to them because you developed them. You've taught them how to think. You've taught them how you think. You've taught them how to think through uh, what does success look like? What are the resources? What are the potential problems or roadblocks? How do I navigate around them? So, thought provoking questions facilitate deeper communication, but the key here is asking the question in the right way and often asking the follow up question. Don't just give someone the answer. And it's very easy to do as a person, as a leader. A lot of times, we know how to do something, but when we're trying to develop that other person, we can't just jump in and take it back over from them. We have to catch ourselves and just saying, let me coach them through. Let me ask them the questions and help them think through the process instead of just giving them the solution that I think they need. And this comes down to, asking for solutions, asking them to think through that. It's kind of like Mac and I often use the analogy when we're speaking that, if you know math, for example, if you know how to do algebra, and someone comes to you and says, here, I have an algebra problem. It takes you just a few minutes to sit down and solve the problem for them. And then you solve the problem for them, you give them the paper back and say, there, okay. But if that's what you do, you guarantee that every time they have an algebra problem, they're going to come to you and say, here, solve my algebra problem. Instead of doing that, if they come to you with an algebra problem and you sit down and you teach them to do the algebra, then the next time they have an algebra problem, they can solve that for themselves. And this will free up your time and energy long term. It also helps them grow, right? That's the importance as a leader, is helping develop someone. Is we have a responsibility to them to help them grow. So ask for recommendations, ask for solutions, ask them to think through the potential problems and roadblocks. Ask why not. Ask what the opportunities are. Ask what else you should think about. What have we not thought about in this situation? And then listen to the answers and learn to get great at asking another question, a follow up question. Bruce Lee declared that a wise man can learn more from a foolish question than a fool can from a wise answer. So, some very useful, I just want to give you a couple of useful questions. And I talk about these a little bit in the book, in the book Leadership Gems for Women, 30 Characteristics of Very Successful Women. And there's a chapter on being a developer and a couple of questions that I talk about that are useful when delegating results. Asking them, how can I help you? Or what do you think? Questions like, what's the first step? What's the next step? I love to ask questions like this, even if I'm not, delegating something, but if I'm coaching someone relative to a problem they're having, just asking them, what what's the next step? What's the first step? I want you to think into this problem so that both of us are thinking into it. Ask them what the plan should be. Ask them what the roadblocks could be. What are the benefits if we take action? What are the possible downsides if we don't take action? What should you do different next time? That's a great question to ask when someone has taken on a project and it didn't go the way it should have, or didn't go the way you thought it was going to. What would you do different next time? And this, learning to coach effectively is helping the individual find the answer. And that's what helps them develop. And, it's one of the things that we can't really, well, we can give someone advice, but it's usually not very effective, because if someone has a problem or a conflict or a situation, we can tell them, we can give them advice. But a lot of times that's not effective because number one, they may not be bought into that as the solution. But number two, even if someone is describing a problem or a situation to you, you may not have all of the information that they have. And so if you coach them to find the answer, even if it takes a little bit more time, it's much better because they have all of the information that they're working through and they can find their answer, their solution. Because the lack of knowledge is not what holds us back in life. It's learning how to apply that. And that requires developing the person, developing the thought process. And so there again, this concept is so cool because it really works with kids, it works with teenagers, it works with other people around us, it works with our team members at work, but learning to be effective at asking great questions and helping that person learn to think and develop is a critical skill as a leader, because there again, long term, that's going to free you up to focus more on the leadership side and less of the management, less of the things that we had to do. I was working not too long ago. I was getting ready to teach a class to a group of young women, and one of them kind of just naturally wanted to take a leadership role, and so she came and she said, "Well, how should I set up the room? And what resources are you going to need?" And she was kind of trying to just be helpful and help me set up the class. And there was an opportunity for me to just say, "Oh, well, I want it this way. I want it this way." But instead of doing that, I said, "Well, here's what we're going to do. So these are the things that we need. What would you recommend in how we set the room up?" And it's interesting because it took her a minute to kind of think that through. Like, she's used to probably older adults are in her life just giving her an answer and telling her what to do. But when I asked her to think into a recommendation based on the needs of the class that we were going to have, then she came up with a solution all by herself. And so took a little bit longer for me to just slow down and help her think that through, but empowered her to get an opportunity to grow, to think about, oh, well, this is what we need, this is what would work, this is what would not work. And it was pretty cool just to see that process play out in real time. And there again, there are some situations where it's not appropriate, right? Where something is urgent or critical and you need to just take care of it. Or it really is important and critical and must be done a certain way for whatever reason, or maybe it's time and you don't have time. For example, if if the building's on fire, then you don't really need to develop someone in thinking about the best escape route. You just need to say, "Hey, go down the steps and out the fire escape." Um, But there are many, many situations where it's easy and quick to give directions, but long term, it's much more effective to learn to develop someone instead of just directing them all of the time. Because ultimately, as a leader, we don't have time to be directing someone all the time. You can't be in all situations with everyone every single moment of the day. You cannot do that. So why not start now and learn to be effective as a developer? And there again, I speak to this a little bit more in the book. There's a chapter on this and I talk about some of the questions, but on the podcast here, I love to just share those stories and those examples and help you understand why it's important and how much greater it can help your effectiveness, your success as a woman, as a leader, is learn to be a developer. Talk to you next time.